The luxury showroom scandal, justice versus power. The showroom smelled of fresh leather and polished chrome, the kind of place where wealth whispered rather than shouted. Sunlight poured in through the massive glass windows, reflecting off the sleek, high-end cars arranged like works of art. Keisha adjusted her blazer, standing tall despite the weight in her chest. She had worked here for 2 years, proving herself every step of the way. Today was supposed to be just another day. And then he walked in. A middle-aged white man, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit, exuding the confidence of someone who had never been told no. Keisha immediately recognized the type, rich, entitled, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. "Good morning, sir. Welcome to Sterling Motors," she said with a practiced smile. "How can I assist you today?" The man barely spared her a glance as he strolled past, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. "I need someone who knows what they're talking about," he muttered under his breath. Keisha's smile didn't falter, though her stomach tightened. "I'd be happy to help, sir. Are you looking for something in particular?" Now, he turned to look at her fully. His expression was one of thinly veiled disdain. "A Bentley. Top model. I assume you can at least point me in the right direction?" Keisha nodded, motioning toward the luxury section of the showroom. "Absolutely, sir. Right this way." As they walked, the man's eyes roamed the showroom, but never once landed on her. "Strange," he murmured. "When I think of high-end cars, I don't exactly picture people like you selling them." It was subtle, but it was there. The quiet, insidious bite of racism wrapped in casual condescension. Keisha had faced this before. Sometimes it was a comment, other times a lingering look of disbelief when she expertly explained the specifications of a luxury vehicle. She took a slow breath. "Our team is highly trained on every vehicle here, sir. If you have any questions about the Bentley, I'd be happy to." "Save it," he interrupted. "I'd rather speak to someone who actually understands these cars." Keisha's hand clenched at her side, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Sir, I do understand. Where's the manager?" The man sighed, as if exhausted by her presence. "I don't have time for this." At that moment, another voice cut through the tension. "I'm the manager," said Monica, stepping forward. She was tall, poised, and commanded authority the moment she entered the space. Like Keisha, she was a black woman. Unlike Keisha, she had long since stopped tolerating this kind of behavior. The man took a long look at her. His lips pressed together. "Of course." Monica folded her arms. "Is there a problem?" "Yes, actually," the man replied, straightening his cuffs. "I'm here to make a serious purchase, and I'd prefer to deal with someone more experienced." Monica raised an eyebrow. "Keisha has been here for 2 years and knows this showroom inside and out. If you'd prefer another salesperson, that's your choice, but it won't be because you don't think she's experienced enough." Keisha felt a rush of gratitude, but also a sharp edge of anxiety. She had seen this play out before. When someone with power didn't get what they wanted, they made sure to take what they wanted in another way. The man let out a slow chuckle, as if amused. "Interesting business model," he mused. "I assume the owner would be interested in knowing how his employees treat paying customers?" Monica didn't blink. "You're welcome to contact him if you feel mistreated, sir." The man nodded as if considering it. Then, with a smirk, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek, black business card. "Oh, don't worry," he said smoothly. "I think I'll have a conversation with him very soon." And with that, he turned on his heel and strolled out of the showroom, leaving behind a trail of silence. Keisha let out a slow breath, but she knew, deep in her bones, that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Keisha knew it was coming. She could feel it in the uneasy silence that settled over the showroom the next morning, in the way the other salespeople avoided her gaze, and in the hushed whispers that stopped the moment she walked into the break room. Something was off. Her shift had just started when she received the call. "Keisha, can you come to my office for a moment?" Monica's voice was calm but clipped, and Keisha immediately recognized the tension buried beneath it. She didn't hesitate. Straightening her blazer, she made her way to the glass-walled office at the back of the showroom. Inside, Monica sat behind her desk, but she wasn't alone. The owner of Sterling Motors, Thomas Sterling himself, was seated across from her, his expression unreadable. A middle-aged man with graying temples and a reputation for valuing discretion, Sterling rarely involved himself in day-to-day operations. The fact that he was here, waiting for her, told Keisha everything she needed to know. She forced herself to remain poised as she took a seat. Monica exhaled sharply before speaking. "Keisha, Mr. Sterling has some concerns." Sterling leaned forward, lacing his fingers together. "Concerns isn't quite the word. I received a call late last night from an extremely valuable client." Keisha's stomach turned. "I assume you mean Richard," she said, already knowing the answer. Sterling's thin smile didn't reach his eyes. "Richard Kensington, yes. He's a high-profile buyer. A man who, up until yesterday, has purchased multiple vehicles from us. He's well-connected, highly respected." Keisha bit back a laugh. "Respected by who? Other rich racists like him?" Sterling continued. "He told me a very concerning story. That he visited my showroom, ready to make a significant purchase, and was treated with, let's say, unprofessional hostility." Keisha's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, Mr. Sterling, I was nothing but professional. He was the one who—" Sterling raised a hand, silencing her. "Let me be clear, Keisha. This is not about what you think happened. This is about perception. And his perception is that he was insulted, dismissed, and discriminated against." Keisha felt her pulse spike. Discriminated against? The sheer audacity of that claim nearly made her laugh out loud. Monica folded her arms, her expression hard. "Sir, if we're talking about what actually happened, I was there. I saw everything." Richard Kensington came in with an attitude, refused to acknowledge Keisha's expertise, and made inappropriate comments about who should or shouldn't be selling luxury cars. Sterling sighed. "Monica, I appreciate your loyalty to your employee, but this isn't about personal feelings. This is business." Keisha clenched her fists in her lap. She had heard that phrase too many times. This is business. It was always an excuse for letting wealthy, powerful men get away with anything they wanted. Sterling leaned back in his chair. "Richard is extremely upset. He's already told several of his associates about his experience here. If we don't handle this carefully, this will cost us more than just one sale. It could damage our reputation with all high-end buyers." Keisha knew exactly where this was going. Monica did, too. "Mr. Sterling, you're not about to." Sterling turned to Keisha. "I have to ask you to resign." A thick, suffocating silence filled the room. Keisha stared at him, her mind momentarily blank. "Excuse me?" Sterling sighed as if this was exhausting for him. "Keisha, let's be honest. You're an excellent employee, but this situation has made it difficult for us to continue working together. I'm prepared to offer you severance." Keisha pushed her chair back and stood. "You want me to leave because I stood up for myself?" "Because you created an unnecessary conflict," Sterling corrected smoothly. "You escalated the situation instead of de-escalating it. That's not the kind of environment we cultivate here." Keisha felt rage bubbling in her chest. "You mean you don't cultivate environments where black women speak up for themselves? Where we refuse to let racist customers walk all over us?" Sterling's face hardened. "You're putting words in my mouth." "No, I'm just saying what you're too much of a coward to admit," Keisha shot back. Monica stood up. "Sir, if you fire Keisha over this, you will face backlash. This is the kind of thing that goes viral in the worst way possible. Do you really want the Sterling Motors name associated with this kind of discrimination?" Sterling's expression darkened. "I don't appreciate being threatened, Monica." Monica didn't flinch. "It's not a threat. It's a reality. And if you fire Keisha, I walk too. Keisha's head snapped toward Monica. Monica, you don't have to. I do, Monica interrupted, locking eyes with her. Because this isn't just about you. It's about every woman who's ever been told to sit down and shut up because a powerful man demanded it. Sterling's expression soured. You're being unreasonable. No, sir, Monica said, voice unwavering. I'm being fair. Sterling sat in silence for a long moment, considering his options. Then, finally, he let out a long, slow exhale. Fine, he said. If that's your choice, so be it. Monica reached for her name badge and placed it on the desk with a controlled finality. It is. Keisha did the same, but her hands trembled. Not with fear, with anger. Sterling barely spared them a glance. Security will escort you out. Keisha inhaled sharply. The humiliation of it made her chest ache. But as she turned to leave, she squared her shoulders. She would not let him see her break. Monica walked beside her as they exited the office. As soon as the door shut behind them, Keisha let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Monica looked at her. You okay? Keisha let out a bitter laugh. I just lost my job because some racist billionaire threw a tantrum. Monica smirked. Yeah. But at least we left on our own terms. As they walked past the showroom floor, employees stared. Some looked sympathetic, others averted their gaze. And then, just as they reached the front doors, a voice called out. Keisha! Monica! They turned, only to see a man watching them closely from across the showroom. A man neither of them recognized. A man holding a small recording device in his hand. Keisha and Monica had barely stepped outside before they heard the voice again. Keisha! Monica! Hold on a second. They turned to see a man approaching from across the parking lot, moving with purpose. He was in his late 40s, tall, with graying hair and a sharp, observant gaze. He was dressed in a casual button-up shirt and jeans, but there was something unmistakably professional about him. Monica crossed her arms. Who's asking? The man slowed his pace, lifting his hands in a gesture of goodwill. David Carter. Investigative journalist. He pulled a small leather case from his pocket and flipped it open, revealing a well-worn press badge. Keisha exchanged a glance with Monica. A journalist? David continued. I was in the showroom yesterday. I saw what happened. And I recorded it. Keisha's breath caught. You recorded it? David nodded, holding up a small recording device. I got the whole thing. Richard Kensington walking in, talking down to you, dismissing you, and then threatening to call the owner the moment Monica stood up for you. Keisha felt an odd mixture of relief and exhaustion wash over her. So you know I didn't do anything wrong. David's eyes darkened. I know you were set up. Monica exhaled sharply. So, what do you want? David studied them for a moment. I want to tell your story. But more than that, I want to take down Richard Kensington. This isn't the first time he's pulled something like this. Keisha frowned. What do you mean? David glanced around the parking lot, as if checking for unwanted ears. Then, lowering his voice, he said, Kensington has a history of getting people like you fired. And by people like you, I mean black professionals who refuse to bow down to him. Keisha and Monica both stiffened. David went on. I've been following him for months. He's a high-profile investor, but he's also a quiet enforcer of power. He uses his influence to remove anyone he doesn't like. A black lawyer in his real estate firm, gone. A Latina woman at his country club, fired after he complained about her attitude. And now you too. Keisha's stomach twisted. That's why he looked so comfortable doing it. Because he's done it before. David nodded. He knows the system works for him. He knows men like Thomas Sterling would rather protect a billionaire's interests than their own employees. Monica narrowed her eyes. And what are you planning to do with all of this? David's voice was firm. Expose him. If you're willing to talk. Keisha hesitated. She had never spoken to the press before, and she knew how the media could twist stories. But at the same time, her entire career had just been stolen from her. What's in it for us? Monica asked bluntly. David smirked. Justice. Keisha folded her arms. Justice doesn't pay the rent. David nodded, unfazed. That's true. But exposure does. If this story gets big enough, Kensington will have no choice but to answer for it. And the bigger this gets, the harder it'll be for Sterling Motors to justify what they did to you. If you play this right, you won't just be jobless women, you'll be the women who took down Richard Kensington. The weight of his words settled between them. Keisha knew she was at a crossroads. She could walk away, try to find another job, and pretend none of this happened. Or she could take a stand. Monica looked at her. What do you think? Keisha took a deep breath. Then, she turned to David and nodded. I'm in. David wasted no time. Within an hour, he had set up a meeting at a small coffee shop across town, away from the prying eyes of Sterling Motors employees. Keisha and Monica sat across from him in a booth, their coffees untouched. David placed his recorder on the table. Tell me everything from the beginning. How long have you been working at Sterling Motors? Keisha straightened. 2 years. I started as a junior sales associate and worked my way up. I was one of their best salespeople. David nodded. And before Kensington walked in, had you ever had issues with customers treating you differently? Keisha hesitated. Yes. I mean, nothing this bad, but there were always a few who didn't take me seriously at first. They'd ask for a real salesperson, as if I wasn't qualified. But usually, I could win them over with knowledge and professionalism. David jotted notes. And Sterling? Did he ever back you up? Keisha let out a humorless laugh. No. He's the kind of man who avoids conflict at all costs. As long as the showroom looked perfect, he didn't care what happened behind the scenes. Monica leaned forward. That's why Kensington knew he could do this. He knew Sterling wouldn't fight for us. David nodded. I need to confirm something. When Kensington left yesterday, he made a phone call. Do you know who he was talking to? Monica exhaled sharply. Thomas Sterling. David's expression darkened. So he didn't even wait. He went straight to the top. Keisha clenched her jaw. He wanted us gone. Immediately. David tapped his fingers against the table. I have contacts in real estate, in law, and in politics. I can pull strings. I can find out exactly how much Kensington has been getting away with. Monica smirked. And how do we make sure people listen? David's smile was sharp. We make it big. Within 3 days, David Carter had published the first article on Kensington. It wasn't just about Keisha and Monica, it was about the pattern. The lawyer he had forced out. The country club employee. The executives who had mysteriously resigned after challenging him. And then, at the heart of it, Sterling Motors, where Richard Kensington had 2 black women fired because they refused to bow to him. The reaction was immediate. Social media erupted. Activists, influencers, and even celebrities began sharing the story, calling for boycotts of Sterling Motors and demanding justice for Keisha and Monica. News outlets picked up the article, inviting David for interviews. Soon, CNN, MSNBC, and even local stations were running the story. Sterling Motors was thrust into a PR nightmare. Richard Kensington, usually untouchable, was now at the center of a national scandal. And in the middle of it all, Keisha and Monica stood tall. The moment David Carter's article hit the internet, it exploded. The headline alone was enough to shake up the business world. Exclusive, billionaire Richard Kensington's long history of discrimination and how he just got 2 black women fired for standing up to him. Social media caught fire. Within hours, hashtags calling for justice spread like wildfire. The outrage was immediate and relentless. The name Richard Kensington was everywhere, but he was silent. The more people demanded a response, the more he refused to give one. And that was when David decided to turn up the heat. His next article went even deeper. It wasn't just about Keisha and Monica anymore. This was a pattern, one that spanned years. The kind of quiet discrimination that happens behind closed doors, protected by money and power. One by one, the victims started coming forward. A black attorney who had been forced out of Kensington's firm after challenging his decisions. A Latina woman who lost her job at an elite country club after Kensington expressed concerns about her attitude. A black financial advisor who mysteriously lost multiple high-profile clients after refusing to adjust his tone. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, and the picture it painted was devastating. Kensington had been doing this for years. Using his influence, making quiet phone calls, ensuring that people who didn't fit his idea of power were removed from their positions. And the worst part? He had never faced a single consequence. Until now. The media frenzy reached its peak when a group of black business leaders and civil rights activists held a press conference. They weren't just asking for an apology. They were calling for his resignation from multiple corporate boards, demanding that he be held accountable. Kensington was no longer just a businessman. He was now a symbol of everything that was wrong with systemic discrimination in corporate America. And then, something happened that no one expected. A former executive from Sterling Motors stepped forward. His name was Mark Latham, and he had worked for the company for over a decade. He wasn't just coming forward with a story, he had proof. In an exclusive interview, Mark sat across from David, his hands trembling slightly as he placed a thick folder of printed emails on the table. "I should have spoken up a long time ago," he admitted. "But I was scared. Kensington has power. A lot of power." David flipped through the emails, his pulse quickening. It was all there. Written proof that Kensington had personally demanded Keisha and Monica be fired. One email from Kensington read, "These women need to go. They were rude, unprofessional, and clearly not the type of people who should be representing a high-end brand like yours." Sterling's response came just 2 minutes later, "Understood. We'll take care of it." David had to stop reading for a moment just to collect himself. It was one thing to know the truth, but to see it laid out so plainly, so casually, was infuriating. He looked up at Mark, his jaw tight. "And you're willing to testify?" Mark hesitated for only a second before nodding. "Yes. I can't stay silent anymore." The next day, David released the bombshell report, and everything changed. Keisha and Monica had stayed quiet long enough. Now, it was their turn to speak. The first time they appeared on national television, they weren't nervous. They were ready. Keisha sat across from the interviewer, her back straight, her voice steady. "When I was fired, I knew it wasn't right. I knew it wasn't fair. But I didn't realize how deep it went. They thought they could erase us, just like that. But we weren't going to let that happen." Monica leaned in. "This isn't just about us. This is about every black woman, every person of color, who has ever been dismissed, silenced, or pushed aside because some powerful man decided they didn't belong." The interviewer played the leaked email from Kensington. The audience gasped. Keisha folded her arms. "That doesn't sound like a business decision to me." That night, the fallout was unavoidable. The next morning, Kensington finally broke his silence. A carefully worded statement was released through his lawyer, claiming that he was deeply sorry if his actions were misinterpreted. Nobody bought it. Protests erupted outside Sterling Motors. People demanded refunds. Customers canceled orders for new cars. The once prestigious showroom stood nearly empty. And then came the lawsuits. Keisha and Monica filed a wrongful termination suit, not just against Sterling Motors, but against Kensington personally. 2 more former employees joined the lawsuit, sharing their own experiences. And then, the FBI got involved. Because while Kensington had been using his power to get people fired, he had also been doing something else, stealing money. The investigation uncovered fraudulent business deals, tax evasion, and illegal financial practices spanning years. What had started as a workplace discrimination case had now become a full-blown federal investigation. It was over. Within weeks, Kensington's empire crumbled. Multiple companies cut ties with him. Sterling Motors' stock plummeted. Thomas Sterling, desperate to distance himself from the scandal, resigned. And Richard Kensington? He was indicted. The last time Keisha and Monica saw his name in the news, it wasn't about luxury cars or business deals. It was about prison time. They never went back to Sterling Motors. They didn't need to. After the lawsuits, they each received settlements large enough to start over. But for them, the real victory wasn't the money. It was proving that Kensington couldn't silence them. It was proving that standing up for what's right still mattered. They used their money to open their own luxury car consulting firm, one that focused on inclusivity, professionalism, and customer service that wasn't defined by race or privilege. The day they opened their doors, a line of customers wrapped around the block. People wanted to support them. People wanted to see them win. And the best part? They did. As they stood in their brand new showroom, Keisha looked over at Monica and smiled. "We did it." Monica grinned, throwing an arm around Keisha's shoulders. "No," she said. "We won." The morning air was crisp as Keisha stepped out onto her balcony, staring at the city below. It had been 3 weeks since she and Monica had walked out of Sterling Motors for the last time, and in that short span, everything had changed. The news cycle had shifted, but the impact of what happened remained. Richard Kensington's name was now synonymous with corporate discrimination, and Sterling Motors had suffered a massive financial hit. Lawsuits were still piling up against both of them, but Keisha and Monica were no longer concerned with what happened to their former employer. Because they were moving forward. A car pulled up in front of the building, sleek and polished. Keisha smiled. Monica was here. Downstairs, Monica climbed out, dressed sharp as ever in a navy blue suit, confidence radiating from her as she walked through the entrance of their brand new office space. When Keisha met her at the door, Monica smirked. "Are you ready for this?" Keisha grinned. "Born ready." They walked through the glass doors of KM Auto Consultants, their own luxury car firm. The moment they stepped inside, they knew they had built something different, something that wasn't based on exclusion and elitism but on true professionalism. Their first week had already been a success. Customers, many of whom had followed their story, were eager to support them. Their inboxes were full of inquiries, and even other dealerships were interested in working with them for consulting on inclusive marketing strategies. Sterling Motors had tried to erase them, but instead, they had amplified their voices. As Monica poured 2 glasses of champagne, she handed one to Keisha. "To new beginnings." Keisha clinked her glass against Monica's. "To taking back our power." They sipped, savoring the moment, but before either could speak, Keisha's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and raised an eyebrow. "It's David." Monica smirked. "Tell me he has another scoop." Keisha answered. "David, what's up?" His voice was excited. "I just got a tip. The board of Sterling Motors? They're considering shutting down the entire showroom where you used to work." Keisha's eyebrows shot up. "Wait. What?" "I'm serious. Between the lawsuits, the protests, and the plummeting sales, they're barely hanging on. The Kensington scandal took them down hard." Monica laughed, shaking her head. "So they fired us to protect their image, and now they don't even have a business left to protect?" David chuckled. "Poetic justice, right?" Keisha smirked. "That's karma." She hung up, turning to Monica. "Well, I guess they're learning the hard way." Monica exhaled, shaking her head. And to think, if they had just backed us up, if they had just done the right thing, they'd still be standing. Keisha leaned against the desk. But they didn't. And now, we get to build something better. And that's exactly what they did. Over the next few months, KM Auto Consultants became one of the fastest growing firms in the industry. More dealerships reached out, asking for training on diversity and inclusion in luxury sales. Even executives who had once ignored them were now seeking their expertise. Keisha and Monica had turned their pain into power. And as they stood in their office, watching their employees help clients with a level of respect and professionalism that had been denied to them, Keisha couldn't help but smile. They had been fired, humiliated, and underestimated. But in the end, they won. And for the first time in a long time, they were exactly where they belonged. Life teaches us that standing up for what's right is never easy, but it is always necessary. Keisha and Monica's story is a reminder that integrity often comes at a cost, yet in the end, truth prevails. They could have stayed silent, accepted injustice, and moved on quietly. Instead, they chose to fight, not just for themselves, but for everyone who has ever been dismissed, overlooked, or silenced because of who they are. For those of us who have lived long enough, we've seen how power and privilege often protect the wrong people, but history tells us that real change happens when ordinary individuals refuse to back down. This isn't just a story about workplace discrimination, it's a testament to courage, resilience, and the power of community. When people unite to challenge injustice, they shake the foundations of systems built on inequality. This lesson applies to all of us, no matter our age. We may no longer be in the workforce, but our voices still matter. We can support, mentor, and advocate for those fighting battles we once faced. Because no matter how much the world changes, doing the right thing will always stand the test of time.